Well, of course, we know the rural economy will be so much more important for many years to come, and collaborative solutions need to ensure that these long-standing issues we've been discussing for many years now to be more sustainable and environmentally focused need to be addressed. Is a top-down approach through policy the right answer, though? Farmers want systems that work for their land type and their business. So joining us tonight on Sarah's Country is Sir Peter Gluckman. He is a former Chief Science Advisor to the government, and now he's the chair of the International Network of Government Science Advice and President-elect, of course, of the International Science Council. Following his article in Farmers Weekly, thanks to Annette Scott this week, I was so privileged that Sir Peter wanted to join us on Sarah's Country, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight, Peter.
Happy to do so, yeah.
Have you got that cold blast come through where you are?
Oh, yes, we're in Auckland, it's cold.
Yeah, and Aucklanders certainly do feel the cold. It's just a different cold, bit of a damp cold, I know, from living up there. Peter, what's your favourite thing about winter?
Oh, walking the beach at Piha when nobody else is on it, actually.
Yes. Oh, that's a fantastic thing to do. Absolutely. Now, Peter, let's get stuck into quite a few number of topics that you discuss with Annette in that Farmers Weekly article. I want to start by talking about farming systems that I just mentioned there before. Can you explain more about your thoughts on how we need to focus on arming farmers with this to make better business decisions with the environmental lens?
Well, I think the first thing is there's an opportunity after COVID to have a big rethink about how New Zealand does things. And I think that around the world there's a lot of thinking about the reset that will come given the recession, given that after every other major recession around the world there's been a reset. My own view is that reset has got to be holistic. So it's not a matter of just looking at the economics or looking at the social aspect, it's looking at the environmental. We have to look at that holistically. And that means fundamentally having a bottom-up approach where we have national conversations. We involve all the partners, all the stakeholders. You can't change any part of that system, any part of those systems without impact on other parts of the system. The reality is that New Zealand's left a lot of things undone for a long time. We haven't sorted out water. We haven't really sorted out land use issues. We haven't sorted out resource management issues. We've got confused regulations between national government and provincial government, regional government. We've got a lot of unmet issues. We're going to rely more and more on the primary sector to grow and be more productive at the same time that we want it to be more sustainable and environmental friendly. Clearly there's going to have to be diversification. Clearly there's going to be changes in farming systems over time for the simple reason that the changes in water distribution over the next 30 years due to climate change are dramatic. Because of all of that, we need to take the opportunity now to take a deep breath, talk to people, resolve what needs to be done collectively, and then get on with it. I mean, New Zealand is in a remarkably unique position. We can make a lot out of recovery into a better New Zealand, projecting to the world, and respecting that the landowners, the farmers, the food producing system can do a lot more for New Zealand. But we've got to be honest. We've got to make it sustainable. We should be thinking a lot more about something like Origin Green or something like the equivalent of that for New Zealand. Now that the most important thing in many ways will be to improve rural broadband so that data and precision methodologies can be used by farmers so much more than they can now. Farmers are good technology, use technology very well when it's to their benefit. And I think rural broadband, advanced rural high-speed broadband, sensors, data, new technologies like that, along with a more intelligent review of how land is used, water is used, and so forth, could lead to a new dawn for agriculture in New Zealand.
So you've talked there a lot about structure and how it's become very siloed, and the hopes were really pinned on this primary sector council of Damien O'Connor's Peter, do you believe that that is the sort of shining light to be able to muster everybody together around that common vision, as you said, in Origin Green?
Oh, look, I think it's broader than any one council. I think it needs national conversations. We're chairing a conversation at the moment through our research centre with most of the food producers, fed farmers, the research sector and agriculture. And they all say this is broader than government. It needs to be a collective, broader view. I think one of the things I've just mentioned there is critically important. We need our scientific research to be focused on where agriculture will be 10, 20 years from now, not just dealing with the very short-term gains where it's been pushed in recent years. So there's a lot to do. Farmers are key. Ultimately, they're the ones who know best what can happen on their land. Most of them know a lot about how they could improve their systems. It's a matter of working out how to help that happen and how to diversify high-valued primary production from both the land and whether it's farming, horticulture or aquaculture.
Do you believe the models are correct around our research institutes and our education systems in the primary sector to effectively take more funding and grow the industry for those 20-year science plans?
Look, I think one of the big resets that's needed is a reset around our higher education and science systems. They were right for the 1990s and perhaps for the 2000s, but as we move forward, we need to integrate and be more holistic. We have the incentives in our science system set very short term. They need to be set longer term because we all know, particularly in agriculture, it takes time to change the system, to develop it, to do the work. So I think that there's a need there. Clearly, farming, agriculture, horticulture, aquaculture are all very technologically based biological sciences. And we need to continue to think about how we upskill the next generation of farmers and primary producers. And on top of that, it's a remarkable, we can build alongside that environmental improvements. And so there's a lot of scope there for thinking about new ways of training young people or people who become sadly unemployed due to the crisis.
Mm-hmm. I want to go to genetic modification and gene editing, Peter. When we're talking about a national conversation, do you think that we've got to a point of maturity to have this, to actually put some plans in place with it that we can benefit from the science at the same time as keep our environmental focus?
Well, first of all, from a scientific point of view, the answer to that is yes. From the public policy point of view, we need to have the conversation so the public and the stakeholders can make decisions about it. Clearly it is the most important biological science, biological technology we have. We're using it heavily, for instance, in the battle against COVID. It's silly to go into the next 20 years with an important weapon with one hand tied behind our back and not access to something that's core to a modern biological economy. And how it's used is something that is up for the broader discussion. It's not for scientists to determine the answer to that question.
We heard there earlier from Beef and Lamb's Environmental Policy Manager, Karina Jordan, and talking around James Shaw wanting the Climate Change Commission to sort of go back to the drawing board and seeing if the science is lining up with our targets. You're a part of a very international network of government science advice. Peter, are we sort of positioned to how New Zealand's farming systems are made up very differently, and our emissions profile is to be able to be green, get like net zero production, and still be able to be productive to sell that story internationally?
Absolutely, but it will require several things to happen. It will require changes in land use. It will require changes in some farming systems. It will. When I say change in land use, to make the best use of the land in a way that's environmentally sustainable. It will require the use of technologies, both digital and life sciences, and it will require better and better farm practice. I mean, excuse me, all the farmers in New Zealand did as well as the best third of farmers in New Zealand did in terms of emissions profile, would be a lot further on. So there's a lot we can do, even with current knowledge. But we will use the new systems. The world needs food, but we must also produce that food in a way and label it as such. If we want high value from our food, we're going to have certified ways of labeling that it has a low carbon footprint.
I want to end on farmer well-being, because if your well-being's not right within yourself and your staff, then there is no environmental improvement or economic improvement to these business operations to then in turn pull the economy through. I have noticed a lot of this conversation about rural pulling the economy through. The sort of, well-being of farmers has changed to that feeling of being needed. And do you believe that a cohesion, a patriotism for New Zealand being a proud food producer will go a long way in pulling us together around this conversation?
Well, I think, first of all, farming has definitely shown a shift in its commitment to sustainability. And that's the first step. Secondly, New Zealand's woken up to the fact that farming is at the core of its economic backbone. That's true. Thirdly, by connecting farmers more, particularly through rural backbone, the high-speed fibre broadband, I think that farmers are not as isolated in the community as they used to be. There are many ways that farmers can be supported. I think that the most important thing is to be wanted. And I think there's been a period when farmers have not been wanted. Now they are wanted.
There's a lot more human psychology behind this next chapter that I think that we need to bring to the table. And as you said, this is about a holistic approach going forward. Thank you, Peter, so much for not only taking the time to join us tonight, but all the great work that you do for New Zealand on an international stage. And I look forward to talking to you in the near future.
So do I, Sarah. All the best, and to all the farmers, good luck.
Thank you so much. That's Sir Peter Gluckman there, former Chief Science Advisor to the national government, and now sitting at an international level for science advice.
This is Sarah's Country.